Hey guys, it's the Salty Coral Tank coming at you again with another video of my 65-gallon Reefer XL from Red Sea. I just wanted to do a quick video on the basic expenses you may incur if you wanted to start a saltwater tank as well. So I'm going to cover that here in just a moment. I have a few points to consider, and I'm sure I forgot something, so leave a comment, press the like button, subscribe for further information. You can always leave me a comment asking me to make specific content. Okay, first off, guys, if you want to pause the video or take a screenshot here, this is a good time to start writing this down or just keeping this stuff in mind for yourself. So I'm going to move this around a little bit here. I'm going to talk about all these specific points, and then I'm going to go over the basics of my setup here. So you want to start a reef tank. First off, you need to think of the goals of your reef tank. What kind of tank or what kind of specimens do you want to have? You know, how flashy of a setup do you want? Do you want a ton of live rock? Do you just want fish with live rock? Do you want corals too? Those are all going to be good starting points to think of for some things you may need before you start your fish tank. So fish only with live rock's pretty easy. It's pretty basic. You don't need you know, a lot of the stuff that you would need if you wanted to keep corals. The lighting is tamed down, the flow is tamed down, so it's a little different. You could also go a species only tank. So if you wanted to have like a mantis shrimp setup, generally those, you know, you can only have one little specimen that you're worried about keeping healthy. You know, that little mantis shrimp, he's not going to tolerate too many others. So you just need a little bit of live rock, some sand for him to, you know, dig into and make his little home. And then you need to feed him, of course, and keep his water clean. But that's about it. He doesn't really need too intense lighting or anything like that. So that's an idea. Or maybe a clown harem. Clown harems, same thing. You know, anemones don't require light. So you really just need light for show, just to show off the anemone's colors. But clowns, you know, they'll host an anemone, and generally if you have multiple clowns, it is kind of hard once you get past a couple because then they'll start beating each other up. But you know, that's something that you can consider as well, just like a species only tank. And then if you wanted a reef tank with some livestock and corals and stuff like that, you could generally want to geared towards reef safe livestock. So things that aren't going to nip at your corals, things that are going to keep the rest of your stuff safe in there. They're only going to eat algae and not your prized corals that you're spending all that money for. If you want to do coral tank, you know, you got to consider what kind of coral tank. You can do an LPS coral tank, a large polyp stony coral. That's moderately difficult, so to speak. You can do a softy tank, and a lot of softy corals are really pretty, like some Sinularis, and I even have some Sarcophyte, some green toadstools in my tank that are really cool. They're also really easy, and they're super easy to frag. SPS is regarded as the most difficult type of setup. You have to have really specific lighting requirements. You have to have really specific flow. So all of that is going to kind of add up as well as far as pricing. The cheapest one to do if you want corals is probably the softies. And then a mixed tank or LPS tank is going to be next. And then the SPS is probably going to cost you the most. Another thing to consider when you're starting a reef tank is the location. Where are you going to put it? This might limit your size. So if you're on the second floor, you'll want to consider the weight. And some of these tanks can be very, very heavy, especially if you're going over 65 gallons or so. Like my tank is a 65-gallon tank with all my live rock and the water and all that other stuff. It's probably around 800 or so pounds, believe it or not. And that's going to be supported downstairs by a steel beam. So I have my tank in a really good spot. I'm not going to have to worry about too much, but you may, depending on your situation, or if it's going to go in your bedroom, you know, you want to consider maybe keeping it on the smaller size unless you have a really big bedroom. I don't know what your bedroom looks like, but that's something to consider as well. And then the general size requirements or the size things that you want to take into account when you're starting a tank is that if you go on the smaller side, and generally I would think anything below 55-ish, 40 gallons, like a 40-gallon breeder or so, or smaller, are going to be generally easier to maintain with the water changes being smaller. And if you do the regular maintenance, it's going to be easy. It's going to be less expensive to equip, easier to catch up on maintenance if you get behind on maintenance anyway. So say you need to do a 50% water change really quickly and you have a 20-gallon tank. Well, that's 10 gallons that you're going to be doing your water change. That's not very difficult. You know, a couple buckets worth and you're good. If you have a big old 150, you're going to be doing 75 gallons of water, and you better have the setup for that and the patience as well if you don't have the best setup. So that's definitely something to consider. On smaller tanks, you also need smaller lights, generally less flow, because to get 40 times flow for an SPS tank on a 40 gallons, a lot easier to get 40 than to get 40 times flow on a 100-gallon tank or so. So keep that in mind. Also, smaller lights, less equipment means less electric. However, smaller tanks may be harder to keep stable without dosing or proper auto top off. They still need all of the, you need to be checking your levels. You need to be making sure that you're keeping the nutrient swings in check. Nothing's getting out of whack. Your nitrates and phosphates aren't, jumping sky high. And you also want to keep your DKH and your calcium where they need to be for your specimens, for your stuff that you're keeping. So that's something to consider as well. Larger tanks are heavy, and obviously they require larger water changes. They're generally more expensive to equip. They're harder to catch up if you get behind on maintenance. Like I was saying earlier, if you have a 150-gallon tank and you need to do a water change, say your nitrates are 30 and you're like, oh no, I wanted them 15, you're going to have to change 75 gallons of your 150-gallon tank water before you can take them down to 15, because you're going to do a 50% water change and you're still going to have them hanging around. Larger tanks require larger lights, more flow, and more electricity, obviously. They, however, in my opinion, can be easier to keep stable due to the larger tank volume. It takes longer for things to get out of whack. So if you say get behind a month on your water changes, and instead of doing a 15 to 30% water change every month, you don't do it for a couple of months. Well, the tank is not necessarily going to get super angry, and you're not going to necessarily kill off a bunch of corals in a 150-gallon tank without a water change in 2 months, as if you have a Pico tank that's like a 12-gallon tank and you're not doing water changes for a month. That could be detrimental to your setup. And then also one thing to keep in mind I just thought of is that smaller tanks, generally have smaller fish, smaller livestock requirements, obviously a lot less live rock. Bigger tanks are the opposite. You can have bigger fish, but you're going to need more live rock to fill the spaces. I probably have too much live rock in my tank. I have all of mine from my 90-gallon. So I probably have 130 pounds of live rock, and I guess that's only 2 times 65. So I guess I'm right at the 1 to 2 pounds per gallon threshold, but I still have it stacked really high, and some people don't necessarily like that. So I have a list here of all of the stuff that I have on my tank, and these are things that you're going to have to source out and to research on your own if you want to set up your own saltwater tank. So we're talking about a tank stand. Do you want a sump? You don't have to have a sump, but that's something to consider. Sumps. A heater. You're going to need a heater to heat the water. You want it 78 to 84, something like that for a reef tank like mine. So you're going to have a big enough heater that's not going to necessarily fry your corals, but it's also going to keep it warm in the winter months. Return pump if using a sump. Power heads for flow, appropriately sized for your needs. So if you need 2 MP10s for a smaller tank, that's going to also be a lot less money than 2 MP40s like I have, and some people need even more than that, obviously. So lighting for your application. And do you need a refugium light as well? Are you going to use a water changer, like an auto water changing solution like I have? Are you going to use dosers? Do you need a skimmer? Are you going to be using chemicals with dosers? Do you need filter socks? And then live rock can be around $6 a pound or more. Generally, it's about I see it for about $4.99 a pound where I am. Livestock also can be a lot of money. So what kind of fish, what kind of, corals, what kind of setup are you wanting? So that I didn't add in my cost, but you can see up top here, my specific setup for what I have was $5,021. And this was a rough estimate. And most of my equipment was acquired over multiple years because I had multiple different tank setups, and I finally landed on my Reefer XL that I bought a couple of years ago. So my tank was it was over $2,000, but I'm estimating it that much. And it included a stand. It also included the sump. I had to pay for my heater. It was about $100. My return pump is a Mobius, what do you call it? A Ecotech Marine S2, whatever that is. Power head, and that was about $375 when I bought it. My power heads, my MP40s in my tank were about 360, 380. I can't really how much, but or remember how much anyway, but I'm estimating it was around $750 for those. My lighting, if it's not on sale, I got mine on sale, disclaimer, was $762, and that's on the cheap end. For a tank like this, I was looking at spending at least $1,000, and that's why I settled on the cheap one on Black Friday. So upwards of $1,000 for a 65-gallon tank. Refugium light, I spent $150 on that. My auto water changer was very pricey. Don't tell my wife. It was $500. My dosers I bought over a couple of years, and they were about $85 a piece, give or take. So that was a 170-ish, give or take. My skimmer, I can't remember how much I paid for it because I don't use it. But if you do use it, it would probably, depending on your setup, cost anywhere from $170 to $300 for an average size tank, maybe up to 90 gallons. If you have a bigger setup than that, they can cost loads more. My chemicals, I spend about $60 every 3 months on my B-Ionic from ESV that I use, and then yours would vary depending on what you get. My filter socks, they were about $14 or $7 a piece. I have 2 of them. And then I am estimating that my live rock, maybe, I got it on Amazon back in the day when it was like $45 for 40 pounds. I got 2 40-pound boxes, so I got that for a steal. It was dry rock. So you may have to be paying a lot more than I did, but I probably still spent $150 or $200 on my live rock, and believe me, that is cheap for a 65-gallon. You can spend loads more than that. And then my fish, I'm not even going to tell you how much I probably spent in the past 12 years on fish that I've killed, corals that I've killed, thousands of dollars. So that's something to consider. If you have a little bit of money saved up, you might want to start with a little tank. I've heard people starting a big old, 90-gallon or even a 120-gallon spending upwards of $8,000. So make sure you do your research on the type of equipment you need. I'm hoping this video really helps you out and put some perspective in the game so you know what you need, you know what to set your goal at. This may help you make your decision on your reef keeping journey to get you a little slice of the ocean in your living room just like I have. So I'm going to go back to the tank real quick here. And with all things considered, with all the money that I've dumped into this silly thing over the past 12 years and its different iterations, I'm really happy with this. By the way, I'm especially happy with my new light. I hung it with some stuff on Amazon. I repurposed my old AI Hydra lights, my light stand anyway. And this is what I go for. Every day I'm messing with my tank. It's a really nice hobby to get into, but you do want to understand that it does take some dedication and it does take some time out of your day or your week. But it's really worth it in my opinion. It's really relaxing to sit here and watch this thing at the end of the night, kick my feet up after a hard day's work. And, you know, I wouldn't have it any other way. You know, some people have hobbies outside of the home. They go golfing, they go shooting, this, that, or the other. But, you know, I like to mess with my tank, and my wife is always yelling at me. My hands are in it constantly. But this is what brings me peace. It's what brings me joy. And so I'm hoping that you get a little joy out of this when you're looking at this tank, wondering whether or not you want to set one up. If you're willing to put forth the dedication and the time it takes to get it started to where, you know, it requires less maintenance like I have, it's going to be really rewarding. I honestly maybe need to spend about 15 minutes a week on my tank, since the auto water changes take care of themselves, since my dosing, you know, takes care of itself. I have it all dialed in, so I just check about once a week now for my my levels and stuff like that, and I'm really happy. So 15 minutes a week, you know, maybe 30 minutes a week. If you don't have a nice setup, it might be an hour every week for you. But if you're willing to put an hour a week into your setup before it gets kind of like, you know, self-sustaining like this, it's going to be a nice, you know, nice relaxing hobby for you. Anyway, if you liked this video, give me a thumbs up. If you want to, please leave a comment. If you want to hear specific content in the future, go ahead and let me know in the comments as well. Otherwise, please subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you for the next video. Have a good day.